Unfortunately, I found out that my fiancée is an escort girl who act like a lawyer to me until now. She froze when she saw the letter in my hand. For a moment, her face went pale, then flushed red. She stammered, her usual quick wit evaporating. "Where did you get that?" she asked. I told her I found it in her purse. I was shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. "What is this? You told me you were a lawyer. You've been working at a firm for years. Why are you still getting notices about the bar exam?" She tried to snatch the letter away, but I held on. Finally, she slumped onto the couch, covered her face with her hands, and whispered, "I can explain." But she didn't explain. Not really. She told me she had been embarrassed, that she had failed the bar exam once, twice, she didn't specify, that when we met, she had already been pretending to have passed because she didn't want me to think less of her. She said she thought it would be temporary, that she would pass eventually, and the lie would disappear into history. But time kept moving forward, and the lie kept growing. She claimed she had taken contract work with law firms doing research and drafting, but not actual litigation. That, she said, explained why I'd never met her coworkers, why her income didn't line up, why her answers about cases were so vague. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But then I asked her point blank, "So, you're not a lawyer at all?" She didn't answer, and in her silence, I got my answer. The spiral of realization. I didn't sleep that night. I sat awake on the couch while she cried herself to sleep in the bedroom. My mind raced through every memory, every story she'd ever told me, the courthouse anecdotes, the late nights at the firm, the sighs about clients, the legal jargon, the pride in her voice when she talked about winning a motion. All of it, fabricated. I felt sick, physically sick, like my body was rejecting the last 3 years of my life. How do you reconcile loving someone so deeply with realizing they've lied to you every single day you've known them? How do you prepare to marry a person when you can't trust a single word that comes out of their mouth? The more I thought about it, the more other details started to crumble. Her student loan story didn't add up. If she never passed the bar, what exactly was she paying for every month? Why was she always broke? Her supposed firm didn't even list her as staff. Was she ever even employed there in any capacity? Or had she been freelancing under the radar this entire time? And the biggest question of all, what else had she lied about? The next day, I called out of work and started digging. I logged into our joint bank account and traced deposits she'd made. They weren't from a law firm. They were from various random LLCs, consulting agencies, even personal Venmo transfers. It looked less like a steady career and more like someone piecing together income however they could. I checked her supposed law school. She had graduated, yes, but there was no record of her passing the bar in our state, or any state for that matter. Every layer I peeled back revealed more rot underneath. I realized I didn't even know what she really did all day. Was she working odd jobs? Was she scamming people? Was she doing something illegal? I didn't know. And that uncertainty was worse than the truth. When she came home that evening, I was waiting. I told her everything I'd found. The deposits, the missing bar records, the fact that her entire career was a facade. She started crying again, swearing she loved me, swearing she never meant for it to go this far. She said she thought if she could just keep the lie going until she passed the bar, everything would make sense retroactively. That she planned to come clean one day once she could show me a license and a real job. But that day never came. And instead, she'd walked with me hand in hand into engagement, into wedding planning, into building a life together, all while carrying this lie like a ticking time bomb in her purse. I asked her the question that had been burning in my chest. If you lied about this, what else have you lied about? She swore nothing else. She swore up and down that everything else between us was real. But how do you believe someone who's already proven they're willing to build an entire identity out of lies? That was 3 days ago. I've barely eaten. I've barely spoken to her. Our wedding is in 5 months, and I feel like my entire future just went up in flames. I don't know what to do. I love her, or at least I love the person I thought she was, but that person doesn't exist. The woman I was going to marry has been living a double life, and I was too blinded by love to see it. Part of me wants to run, to call off the wedding, cut my losses, and never look back. Another part of me aches for her, because as furious as I am, I can see the shame in her eyes, the desperation. I can see that she's trapped herself in a lie that she doesn't know how to escape. But is that my problem to fix? Is that the kind of marriage I want? To spend my life wondering if the next thing she says is true or just another layer of deception? I keep replaying one line she said through tears. "You don't understand." I couldn't tell you what I was really doing. When I pressed her on it, she shut down completely. No details, no explanations, just silence. And that's the part that terrifies me most. Because if she wasn't practicing law, what was she doing all those nights she came home late with courthouse stories? I don't have that answer yet, but I'm afraid that when I find it, it'll be even worse than the lies I already know about. It's been 2 weeks since I found the letter in her purse, and my world still feels like it's been flipped upside down. After my original post, I expected clarity. I thought I'd confront her. She'd either confess or double down, and I'd know what decision to make. Instead, I'm more lost than ever, because the problem isn't just the lie about being a lawyer. It's everything that's come out since, and everything that still doesn't add up. We've had multiple screaming matches, long silences, tearful apologies. Each time I think I'm getting the truth, she throws out another detail that either contradicts what she said before or raises a dozen new questions. According to her, here's the story. She did graduate law school. She did try to pass the bar 3 times. Each time she failed. She was embarrassed, and instead of admitting failure, she told everyone, including me, that she passed. She said she started doing contract research work for lawyers under the table, drafting memos, writing briefs, stuff that didn't require a license, as long as it was supervised. She insists that's what she was doing when she claimed to be working late. But here's the kicker. She refuses to give me names. Not of lawyers she worked under, not of firms that supposedly paid her, nothing. She says she can't because she'd be blacklisted if anyone knew she was helping without being licensed. It doesn't make sense. If she were really just embarrassed, wouldn't she jump at the chance to show me legitimate work she'd done? Wouldn't she want to prove that at least some of her story was real? Instead, every answer feels like it's just vague enough to keep me hooked, but not enough to verify. I finally broke down and told my parents. They were shocked, but my mom tried to play peacemaker. Everyone makes mistakes, she said. She's clearly insecure. Maybe this is something you two can work through. My dad was harsher. If she's lying about her career, she's lying about other things too. You don't marry a liar. My sister, who never really liked my fiancé, outright told me to cancel the wedding. She conned you, she said. This is more than insecurity. This is a double life. Their words echoed my own thoughts, but hearing them out loud made it all feel heavier. Friends start asking questions. Word got out faster than I expected. A couple of friends who had been at that dinner where she dodged the paralegal's questions started texting me. One of them, let's call him Mark, said something that shook me. He told me he'd seen her downtown a few months ago, middle of the afternoon on a weekday. She wasn't in business attire. She was in jeans, sitting in a cafe, talking animatedly with a man he didn't recognize. When he waved to her, she looked startled, then brushed him off, saying she was between client meetings. At the time, he didn't think much of it. But now, it feels like another crack in her carefully constructed mask. I started digging deeper into her finances. That joint account was only the tip of the iceberg. She has separate accounts I never had access to. I only found out because of a slip-up. She left her laptop open one night. What I saw wasn't a steady paycheck or even freelance invoices. It was erratic deposits, often from individuals. Sometimes large sums, thousands at a time. Other times, small amounts, like she was being reimbursed for something. When I asked her about it, she blew up at me. She said I was invading her privacy and that I didn't understand how side work in the legal field operates. But no matter how I look at it, nothing about her finances screams legal research. It screams something else, something darker. I can't turn my brain off. Every time she leaves the apartment, I wonder where she's really going. Every time she tells me she's working, I wonder who she's actually with. There are moments when she clings to me, sobbing, swearing she loves me, swearing she never meant to hurt me. And in those moments, my heart aches because I still see the woman I fell in love with. But then I remember the letter, the lies, the secrets, and I feel like I'm sleeping next to a stranger. The first big clue 3 nights ago. Something happened that I can't shake. She came home late, 1:30 a.m. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess. She looked exhausted, but not in the way someone looks after a night at the office. When I asked where she'd been, she hesitated. Then she said, with a client, not working on a case, not helping with research, just a client. When I pressed, she snapped, you don't need to know everything I do. Trust me or don't, but stop interrogating me like I'm a criminal. That word, criminal, has been bouncing around in my head ever since. Because I'm starting to think this isn't just about failing the bar exam. I think my fiancé has been doing something she doesn't want me, or anyone else, to know about. Something that has nothing to do with law. And for the first time, I'm scared. Not just for our relationship, but for what I might discover if I keep pulling at this thread. It's been another week since my last post, and I feel like I'm living inside a bad TV drama. After the 1:30 a.m. incident, I couldn't shake the suspicion that her client wasn't legal work. The word had a different weight when she said it, almost like she was testing me, waiting to see if I'd push. So I pushed. I started asking more direct questions. Who are these clients? What exactly are you doing for them? Why do they pay you directly instead of through a firm? Every time she deflected. Sometimes she'd cry. Sometimes she'd rage. Sometimes she'd flip it back on me. Why don't you trust me? Why are you trying to ruin everything? But the harder she fought to keep the walls up, the more convinced I became that something enormous was hiding behind them. One night, when she went to shower, I checked her purse again. I know, invasion of privacy, But at this point, I was desperate. Inside was a receipt from a hotel bar downtown. Not a fancy cocktail lounge, a discreet, mid-range place known more for late-night meetings than socializing. The receipt was for 2 drinks, 2 people, and the kicker? The timestamp was the same night she told me she was pulling an all-nighter on a motion for summary judgment. My stomach dropped. I didn't know who else to turn to, so I messaged one of her old classmates, a woman I'd met a few times at parties. Let's call her Rachel. I asked if my fiancé ever worked with her firm, if she'd ever seen her around in professional settings. Rachel hesitated before answering. Finally, she said, "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but no, I've never seen her practice, and I'd be careful. She's not who you think she is." When I pressed for details, Rachel clammed up. "Just ask her what she does downtown at night, that's all I'll say." Downtown at night. The same part of the city as that hotel bar. The next night, I told my fiancé I had to stay late at work. Instead, I parked near her office building and waited. Sure enough, around 9 p.m. she left. Not with a briefcase or a stack of files. Dressed differently. More nightlife than professional. I followed her car downtown, heart hammering in my chest. She pulled up to another hotel, walked inside. Didn't come out for hours. By the time she returned home, I was lying awake in bed, pretending to sleep. She slipped in quietly, like she didn't want to wake me. The breaking moment came 2 nights later. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I told her I knew she wasn't working as a lawyer. I knew she was meeting men in hotels. I demanded she tell me the truth. For a long time, she said nothing, just stared at me with this blank, exhausted expression. And then she said, almost in a whisper, "I was never practicing law. I was never going to pass the bar. I work as an escort." My ears rang. I thought I misheard her, but she repeated it, slower, clearer. She said after failing the bar, she panicked. She had massive student loans. She didn't want to look like a failure. Someone she knew introduced her to private clients. At first, she thought it would be temporary, just to get by until she passed the exam. But then she failed again, and by then, she was in too deep. "It paid more than I ever would have made starting out as a lawyer," she said, almost bitterly. "And you thought I was successful. You loved that version of me. So I kept it up." I didn't know what to say. I felt like my body was hollow, like the air had been sucked out of the room. The woman I loved, the woman I was about to marry, wasn't just lying about her career. She was living an entirely different life. Nights in hotels, secret clients, money flowing in from strangers. When I asked how long it had been going on, she admitted, since before we met, which means the entire relationship, the entire thing, was built on a lie. Every kiss goodnight, every long day at work story, every late arrival home, a facade, a cover for a life I never even suspected. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "But I still love you. You're the only real part of my life." Do you know how twisted that feels to hear? To be told you're the real part by someone who's been lying to your face for years? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw her out of the apartment that second. But I just sat there, numb, staring at the woman I thought I was going to marry. Because deep down, I still loved her. Or maybe I loved the version of her I thought existed. I don't even know anymore. So now here I am. The wedding is 5 months away. Deposits paid, guests invited, families preparing. And I'm staring at this impossible choice. Do I call it off? Admit to everyone that the woman I was going to marry has been living a double life as an escort and watch everything collapse around me? Or do I forgive, pretend the past doesn't matter, cling to the love I thought was real, and try to build something out of the ashes of her lies? Because the scariest truth of all is this: even knowing everything, part of me still wants to save her. But another part of me knows maybe she was never mine to save. After her confession, I told myself I needed time. Time to think, time to breathe, time to decide if the life I thought I had was salvageable. She cried for hours that night, said she didn't want to lose me, that she'd quit, that she'd do anything to prove she still loved me. She begged me not to tell anyone. Her parents, our friends, nobody. I should have walked away right then, but I didn't. Instead, I told her we'd try. I don't know why. Maybe because I couldn't stand the idea that the last 3 years of my life had been a lie. Maybe because I wanted to believe there was a version of her who could be honest, who could choose me over everything else. For a week, things were strangely calm. She stayed home every night. She cooked dinner, something she almost never did before. She was affectionate, attentive, almost like she was trying to play the role of the perfect fiancée to the letter. But the thing about trust is once it's gone, you see cracks everywhere. Every late text reply made my stomach twist. Every phone call she took in another room set alarms off in my head. And deep down, I could feel it, the performance, like she was acting out what she thought I wanted rather than living truthfully. It didn't take long for the lie to spill beyond us. My mom called one afternoon, casual as ever, asking how wedding planning was going. I dodged, kept my answers vague, but I must have sounded off because she pressed harder. Finally, she said, Are you two okay? You don't sound excited anymore." That broke something in me. Without meaning to, I snapped back, "Would you still be excited if your son was marrying a woman who lied about her entire career?" Silence. And then, "What are you talking about?" I tried to backtrack, but it was too late. She knew. Mothers always know. That night she texted me a wall of questions. I ignored them, but I knew the clock was ticking before word got around. 2 days later, my fiancé's sister messaged me out of the blue. "Is it true? What people are saying about her?" My heart sank. It was already spreading. When I confronted my fiancé, she exploded, screamed that I was betraying her, that I had no right to out her secret, that I was destroying her life. I told her I never told anyone the full truth, but the guilt in her eyes told me she suspected what I suspected, that one of her classmates, Rachel maybe, had already put pieces together. Now both our families were circling, smelling blood in the water. We tried to patch things up. She swore again that she'd quit, swore again that she only ever wanted me. She even deleted a few numbers from her phone in front of me, like that would erase years of deception. For a brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could bury it, pretend the past was the past, move forward. But every night I lay awake next to her, wondering who she really was. Because if she could lie about being a lawyer for years, what else could she lie about? And then the slip-ups started. Little things. A hotel keycard left in her wallet from a long time ago. A cash deposit on her bank app at 11 p.m. A text that flashed on her screen while she was cooking dinner. Same room as last time, before she grabbed the phone and locked it. Every time I asked, she had an answer, a deflection, a half-truth. And every time I hated myself more for half believing it. One more secret. The breaking point came last weekend. She told me she was going out with a girlfriend from law school. Dinner and drinks. Just a girls' night, she promised. She even let me see the text thread to prove it. Except the contact name was saved as Sarah Hart. And something about it felt wrong. The way the texts were worded, stilted, almost businesslike. So while she was in the shower, I copied the number. And I called it the next day. A man answered. My blood ran cold. I hung up immediately. But then he called back. And when I didn't answer, he left a voicemail. It was short, gruff, almost annoyed. "Tell her the usual's fine. And stop playing games." I must have replayed that message 20 times, each time feeling my stomach sink deeper. She hadn't quit. She hadn't stopped. The entire week of proving her love was just another performance. Another lie layered on top of all the others. And worse, if she was saving clients' numbers under fake names, how many more lies were buried under the surface? That night, she came home all smiles, smelling like expensive perfume she didn't own last month. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted takeout, acted like nothing was wrong. I sat there staring at her, with my phone in my pocket and the voicemail burning a hole through me. She noticed my expression and froze. "What?" she asked. I didn't answer, because in that moment, I realized something that chilled me more than anything else. I still didn't know who the hell I was engaged to. And tomorrow night, I'm going to confront her with that voicemail. I don't know if it'll end in answers, in a breakup, or in something darker. All I know is this story isn't over. I didn't wait another day. The voicemail was still sitting in my phone like a ticking bomb. That night, when she walked through the door smiling like everything was normal, I couldn't keep the mask on anymore. I sat her down at the kitchen table. She looked nervous immediately, probably sensing the change in my tone. I hit play. The voice of a strange man filled the room. "Tell her the usual's fine. And stop playing games." Her face drained of color. For a moment, she tried to play dumb. "What's that? Who is that?" I didn't blink. "You tell me." She laughed, a brittle, hollow laugh. Said it must be a wrong number. Said she didn't know who it was. So I showed her my call log. The number matched the one she had saved as Sarah Hart. The act crumbled. She snapped, slammed her hand on the table, and screamed, "Why are you snooping through my phone? Why don't you trust me?" And that was the moment I realized how far gone we were. Because trust doesn't survive in a relationship where one person lives a double life. I told her I knew. I knew she hadn't stopped. I knew she'd been lying about quitting. I knew every kiss, every smile, every "I love you" was stitched together with deception. For a second, I thought she might tell the truth. Instead, she doubled down. "I only did it for us. For money. For our future. You don't understand." And maybe that was the worst part. She still thought she could spin this into some twisted version of love. The screaming match lasted for hours. She accused me of ruining her life, of being ungrateful, of never understanding how much she sacrificed. I told her she'd already ruined it herself, that I could never marry someone who lied on this scale. At one point, she broke down sobbing, grabbing my hands, swearing she'd change. The next minute, she was throwing things, raging that I was judging her. It was chaos. And in the middle of it, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister. A simple text. "Mom told me everything. Is it true?" My stomach dropped. It was out. Fully out. When I didn't respond, She called. I answered, and before I could say a word, she said, "You can't marry her. You know that, right?" My fiancée overheard. She ripped the phone from my hand and started screaming into the receiver, telling my family to stay out of it, that it was none of their business. But by then, it was too late. The secret wasn't just between us anymore. It was wildfire. Within 48 hours, both families knew. My mother cried. Her father called me, furious, accusing me of spreading lies. My best friend texted me, "Dude, what the hell is going on?" The implosion had begun, and there was no putting the pieces back together. The wedding unraveled overnight. Vendors started calling. My fiancé had apparently stopped paying deposits weeks ago. The venue informed us the final payment hadn't been made. The photographer canceled after hearing family drama through the grapevine. Friends who were supposed to be bridesmaids and groomsmen started backing out, half with awkward excuses, half with blunt honesty. "Man, we can't stand up there and celebrate this if it's true." She lashed out at me constantly, accusing me of sabotaging everything. But the truth was, her own lies had done the job. I kept waiting for her to show real remorse, to drop the act and admit the whole truth. But every conversation felt like I was talking to a different person. One moment the victim, the next the villain, the next the desperate partner promising change. I couldn't tell if she believed her own stories anymore, or if she was just trying to drown me in them. The nail in the coffin came a week later. I was clearing out some of her things when I found an envelope tucked into the bottom of her dresser. Inside, stacks of cash. Thousands. Tens of thousands. And hidden among the bills, a set of hotel key cards. Not one, not two, at least 6, all from the same downtown luxury hotel. When I confronted her, she didn't even bother to deny it. Instead, she went quiet, cold, almost smug. Finally, she said, "You'll never understand. You were never supposed to find out." And that was when I realized the full, brutal truth. She wasn't sorry for lying. She was sorry for getting caught. I called off the engagement. There was no big cinematic goodbye, no tearful last kiss, no dramatic exit. Just me standing in our apartment, handing her the ring box and saying, "We're done." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stared at me with this hollow look, like I'd just taken away her favorite disguise. Then she left. The next morning, her stuff was gone. Her number blocked me a day later. And just like that, 3 years of my life disappeared in silence. Now, weeks later, I'm sitting here trying to pick up the pieces. The wedding that never happened. The friends who don't know what to say. The family who still asks how I didn't see it sooner. But mostly, I'm left with one thought that keeps me up at night. I thought I was marrying a lawyer. Instead, I almost married a stranger. And the worst part is, I still don't know who she really was.